Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Welcome to Dev with Excel. All right, today we are going to be solving an exercise under the second module of part 2, which is forms. All right, so here we are talking about forms and we need to solve exercises 2.6 to 2.10 under forms. But today we are going to be solving exercise 2.6, which is this. All right, so in the previous video, we solved some exercises. Let's go back to the previous, let's go back to what we did in the previous video. So in the previous video, we solved exercise 2.5, I think so, exercise 2.5, and we were able to, so this was the last exercise we solved, right? So it talked about, it's asked us to separate our course components as a separate module and the likes. All right, so that's what we did in the last video. So in this video, we are going to be solving exercise 2.6, and this is referring to the phone book. So let's see what the instruction says. It says, let's create a simple phone book in this part. We will only be adding names to the phone book. Let us start by implementing the addition of a person to the phone book. You can use the code below as a starting point for the app component of your application. All right, so we have a code here that we can use to begin with, right? So when you read from these parts here down to where the exercise starts, I believe we should be able to have an idea of how to go around or how to work the exercises given here from 2.6 to 2.10. So I'm not going to be explaining what is being taught here. Actually, that's not what this video is all about. I'm only trying to explain how I solved these exercises in my own way, right? So all right, so let's head over to the code implementation in our VS Code. All right, so looking at the VS Code there, we can see that I already have a folder set up called PhoneBook, which also has step one. So step one is the current exercise we want to work on, which is exercise 2.6. That's step one. And I think this setup it contains the code of the previous video. Let's confirm. So let's copy the part of step one. Let's seed into it. Then let's npm run. So let's come to this local host to be sure of what we have here. Okay, yeah, so this is actually what we did in the previous video, right? So we are going to be moving into today's video. All right, so coming to the SLC folder here. So in the previous video, I actually have this component folder outside the SLC, right? So I don't think that's the way it should be done when it comes to React. The components should be written inside the SLC folder, right? Right. So I can even just choose to write a component in smaller case. I don't think this is really something to bother about, but let's just do it that way. Now, like I said, this code is a code implementation for the previous video. So we are going to be changing all of this. And also here in main, we are going to be adding a few things here based on the the lesson we have in this particular form modules, right? So when you get to study what we have here, you see that here we are going to be putting some props. We are going to be working with some props here. All right, so when we get there, we see how to work that. Okay, so inside components, we have course.jsx. We are going to be changing this as well. Okay, all right, so let's begin with app.jsx. Okay, so I'm going to be minimizing this part and also this part too. Going to the instruction, we have a piece of code we can copy and then paste into the app.jsx. So we copy this code and then we remove everything here and then we replace it with what we just copied. All right, so we have this and I save it. Let's go to our browser to see if this is okay. So we have this displayed on our browser, right? So when we click on add, nothing happens. All right. So let's go to the developers tool to see what's going on in the background. Okay, so when we refresh this, nothing happens. When we click on add, nothing happens as well. All right, so that's not a problem. Okay, so here, what we need to do now is we are going to be writing our codes in such a way that this button add is going to be active. This form also is going to be accepting some event handlers, right? And also we are going to be working with this input. So the buttons, the inputs, the forms, we are going to be working on everything. All right, so let's begin. So what can we do first? Here, let's see what we can do first. Firstly, we need to write a function. Before then, persons here is a state, new name here is a state, right? So set persons and set new names, they are simply the functions that work with this state, right? They try to update the values of the state. All right. Now, persons here currently has this value, and this value is definitely an array, and it contains the name property, which is Atos Hellas. So the next thing we need to do is we need to write a function, right, that is going to have an event as a parameter. So what this is actually going to do is this is going to be helping us to set the event and then return the form, right? And also help us to return the new name we are going to be writing as well. Okay, so let's begin with this. Let's start with const add name. So that's going to be the name of the function. It helps us to add a name to the application. So using the arrow function, the next thing we need to do is we need to, because when we this add name is going to be an event handler in the form, right? So when we submit this form, there's going to be some default some default programs running, right? So it's going to make our pages to reload themselves. So we want to prevent that. So we are going to be preventing, amongst other happenings, we are going to be preventing the default nature whereby the page loads by itself. So we are going to come here and pass a parameter. We call it event, and then here we say event dot prevent default. So this is going to stop our page from reloading on its own. Now we want to console log the event dot target. Now the event dot target here, this refers to the form itself, right? This is going to refer to the form itself because we are going to be placing this function as an event handler in this form here, right? So when we get there, we are going to understand better. So the next thing we want to do is we want to see how we can add new names to our program. So how can that happen? We are going to simply going to create an object. So let's call the object name object, and this is going to accept a property which is called name, and inside this name we are going to be putting this new name there. Then we save, right? So now this new name is going to be added to every other names that has been added in the program, right? So how can we do that? We need to use the concat method, right? The concat, it concatenates other names to the existing names already in the program. So we simply say set persons which is this function that handles this state, set persons, and then we say persons dot concat. Now, what are we trying to concat? We are trying to concat this name object. Now, I understand that this is going to be a little bit confusing, right? Now, where are we getting the persons from? This person here is the array we actually have here, right? Which is which has the object that contains the property name and the value Atos Hellas, right? So we are going to be concatenating any new name that is passed in the input here into this person state, which is simply what we just did now. And thereafter, after doing that, we want that this input here, it returns back to an empty string. So we don't want to see that name still in this input. So we are going to say set new name, which is the function that handles a new name. We set it to an empty string. All right. So having done that, we've been able to create this function that is going to help us to add a new name to the application. The next thing we want to do is we want to create a function that is going to help us to handle the change. Okay, so before we do that, let's see how this one works, right? So we are going to be using this add name function as an event handler in this form. So here we come to form and we say on submit. So that means that when this form is submitted, this event should be triggered. Add name should be triggered, right? Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we need to work on the input here. So for the input, what we want to do is we want to create a value for the input here, right? And we are going to call that value new name. So we say value equals new name. So this is going to be the value that is passed into the input here. So anything we pass into the input here is being referred to as new name, right? Which is concatenated into this person's array, which contains an object, right? Let me say that again. When we pass in a name here, it becomes the value of the input here, right? Which is a new name. And this new name is being concatenated to the person's array here. And this array contains an object which contains the name. All right. So I believe when you go through the note that is being given to us, this should be clear enough, right? So I am actually trying my best to actually explain this. Okay, because the truth is I also struggle to understand this too. So it might not be easy for me to explain it in the best way it should be. All right. So the next thing we want to do is let's see what happens for now. Let's save this. Let's come here. Okay, so as you can see, I am trying to write into this name input here, but it's not allowing me because we need to write a function called that is going to help us to edit this part. As you can see, nothing is happening here. So what we can do is we are going to write a function and we are going to call it, let's call it handle name change. So that's going to help us to be able to edit whatever we want to write in this name here. So let's say const handle name change. So here, what do we need to do here? We need to set the new name. Now, here is the function that handles this new name, that updates the value of this new name, right? So we are going to write it here and say set new name. And then what we want to write here is we are going to be writing event.target. Now, event.target, it is going to refer to the entire form, right? But The value here, which is a new name here, we refer to the value we'll be writing inside this name, inside this input here. So we are simply going to target the value. We say event.target.value. So we can as well console log whatever this is going to be. So let's change set new name here to console log, so that when that happens, we can also see it in the background. So this event here is crossed because we need to pass it as a parameter here. So we simply write event here and that should go away. Okay, so that's that. Now, where do we place in handle new name? We need to place in the handle new name inside the input as an unchanged attribute. So we say unchanged equals handle name change. Okay, so I want to believe this is working fine. All right, so let's go to this part now. Yeah, now we can see that this is working now. We can now edit this part. Let's try to add something. Nothing shows up. Okay, so let's go to the developers tool to see if anything is actually happening in the background. So let's close this again. Let's write A, B, C, D, E. Then let's clear it off again. All right, A, B, C, D, E. Okay, so let's add. It's console logging the entire form here, right? Because we actually asked it to console log this part here. So it's console logging this. It's also console logging this part too, right? So we need it to actually show under numbers, just as the instruction asks us to do here. Here, whenever we pass in the input, it's expected to show underneath the numbers here, right? So that's what we're actually trying to achieve. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is, let's see how we can display this name itself, Atos Hellas, on our browser here. Let's see how we can achieve that. So under the numbers here, let's take this triple dots here. Let's try to capture what we have here. So we know that this is under percent, right? Let's first of all, let's see what is going to happen. Let's write percent and see if that's going to work. Says consider adding an error boundary to your tree. Okay, I think because persons is an array, let's see what we can do. So persons is an array, right? And this object is the first object we have. So let's do persons square bracket 0, since it's the first object we have. Then dot, let's target name. Now this is the name we are trying to target here. That's Ato Hellas. Let's save this and see what happens. All right, now we can see that. Let's remove this and then let's refresh. Now we can see that there is no error here anymore, and also we have Ato Hellas displayed, right? But at this point, if we try to add a name, I'm not sure it's going to work out just yet. Let's click on add. That does not work out just yet. Okay, so we've been able to achieve this. Then the next one to achieve is any input we get here should be rendered underneath Atos Hellas. Okay, so before we do that, it would be nice to actually place this inside the main.jsx and not here. So we simply go to the main.jsx, and then here we are going to be writing an array. So we say const, let's call it percent equals, let's copy or let's cut this out. That's this part. We are cutting this array that contains an object. We are cutting it out and then we are placing it here. So let's save this. Okay, so here we now have persons here. All right. Then here, what we can do is we need to put in a parameter for the app components, right? And we are going to be using props. So props here, to capture this particular variable, this array variable here, we come here and say props dot persons. That means that this part here, this part here, this name, the entire array here is what we have here. But here we are using props. That's just what it means actually. All right, so what do we now need to do next? You can see that here, this app here, it has the props as it has the props here as a property, right? So we could just come here, or we can as well just change these props to persons also. But let's leave it as props. Then what we can do here is let's come here and then put props. Okay, sorry. This person here is a props, is a property, right? So we simply just come here and then put persons. Hope that does not confuse us. Now, this person is a props, like I said, which is this, the property that we are targeting, which is written here, and the value that needs to be placed in here is this entire array, right, which is persons. So we can just choose to do something like this. We can just copy this array here and then paste it here, or we could just put the name of the array into this place here, right? That should work. All right, that works. So what we just did is we did the same thing that we did earlier, but here we used the props to solve that. Okay, so up till now, we can edit the input, but we can't still add names here. So the next thing we need to do here is let's be very sure of what we need to do, because here we are no longer going to use this, right? But I'm just going to leave it there for the meantime until when we get to understand what to do next. So the next thing we need to do is we need to write another component, right? We need to define another component. We can call that names. Now let's call it const names equals this. Now what this is going to do is this names is going to help us to decide what should be returned underneath this part here. What name should be returned, or what property should be returned underneath this name here. So here we are going to say const names, which is a component, and inside of it we want to return a value. Let's return, let's use a div first. uh, and inside this div we want to return this name here. So we need to target this name. And how do we target this name? We need to call the name of the variable first. It's going to be persons.name. So what we can do here is we are going to give these names a props, right? So we can just destructure it right away and say person. Then inside here we write person.name. Now this person here, right, is a props, right? And that is targeting this name here, meaning the persons here, because we are still going to be iterating over this person's array, right? And it's going to be targeting name. That's persons.name. But since it's going to be iterated, the value we are going to be passing in the function that is going to help us to iterate this, the parameter is going to be called person, right? So that is what we've pre-written here. So here we have person here as a destructured property, and then we say person.name. All right, this is going to make sense very soon. All right, so having written this component, we need to come down around here to change some things. So what do we need to do next? We need to iterate over this persons array. So we are going to be using the map method. We say persons.map. I hope this is going to work. Persons.map. So this is going to have a person parameter. and then here we are using the arrow function, and then we want to return this names component, and we understand that this name component will give us the person dot name, which is Atos Hellas. So we are going to come here and say names, then do something like this. All right, now this has broken. Yes, it's expected to break because we need to pass in the props. Now, what is the props for the name? The names component. The props we have here is person. So here we come and say person is equal to, now what is going to be the value of this person property? The value is going to be this person. So we copy this person and then we paste it here. Let's save this and see. Okay, something is not working fine. Something isn't working fine. Okay, so let's check the error message we are having here. It says unexpected token expected this curly brace, right? Okay, okay. Here it says, okay, so let's see what is going on here. I think we are expected to actually put this in another round bracket also. Let's save this and see. This is not coming off as expected. Okay, I think there's a slight mistake. There's a slight mistake. Okay, so how can we handle this? How can we handle this? We need to rewrite this part. Let's put this in a tag to see if that is going to work out. Or let's just rewrite this entire part again. I think might have made some mistakes somewhere. Let's save this. Okay, this works out this way. Now here we say persons.map, and then it's accept person, and then the arrow function, and then we want to work with names, the names component. Okay, let's wrap this in a p tag first to be sure of what is happening. Okay, so that does not fix it. Okay, so let's give it the property again. So we say the props is person, right? Let's confirm that person, and having the value person. Hmm. Where is this issue coming from? Div open and close here, div open and closed here. Could not find person. Do you mean persons? No. Oh, all right. Okay, my bad. My bad. So, okay. So, map is supposed to accept its own function, right? So that's going to be person here. Then immediately after the round bracket, then we placing the curly brace. So here, let's write the names components, and let's do something like this. Okay, now this shows that the syntax is working fair enough now. Now we need to add in the properties, right, which is person. Let's be sure. Person, yes, person, right? So we come here, we write person, and the value should be this person we have here, which is this. Let's save this and see. All right, so let's load this. Let's try to write inside this and see. Okay, so it's accepting the input to edit. Let's see what's going on in the developers tool. All right, so let's refresh this. Let's write hello. Let's try to add it and see. So this is console logging the entire form, which is the event.target. All right, so this is not what we need for now. Okay, let me remove this and then F12 here. Okay, so let's just be sure of what is going on in the background. Okay, so having done this, we have this way, but we need to be very sure that this returns something underneath. Okay, let's go back to our code to be sure of what is happening. Here we have these props. Okay, so what do we need to do that we've not done? Here we have the add name. Here we have new name. Here we have handle name. For the submit button, we have add. Then persons here. Okay, here, so we are supposed to return this, right? Because this is a function, we need to return this. So let's use the return keyword here and see if that works. All right, so we can see that this gives us hello. So let's try to run something else. Let's run, okay, let's run forms. Let's write forms. We can see that forms is being written here, and then let's add it to see. Okay, so forms here is added here. Awesome, awesome. So we are having some warnings here. Let's see what it's saying. It said missing key prop for element in iterator. Okay, so here what do we need to do to solve that? We need to give it a key attribute, right? But before that, because we need to use the ID of this person's array as a key, but we don't have that yet. So what we can do is let's come to main.jsx and let's add an ID property to the object. So let's call it ID1. We don't even need to do this here. We don't need to do this here. We can just come here and above this part here, we say ID, then that's going to be persons dot length plus 1. So this is going to be the ID, right? So we come down here and then say key equals. Now this key now is going to be equal to the person, which is a single person when this is iterated, right? Which is this. So this persons is the singular person that is returned when we use this map method. So here it's going to be person dot id. So we save that. So I think that warning has gone, right? Let's refresh this. Let's refresh this and then let's write hello. Hello React. Let's add it. Okay, so here we have hello React, right? So that shows that our code implementation works just fine, right? It works very fine. Okay, so the next thing we need to consider is what's that we need to consider. So our app works exactly the way it's expected of us to solve it, right? But let's see what we can still do here. Here, let's make this part more like a list, or we can just leave it this way. So if you want to make this in form of a list, we replace this div with ul as the unordered list, and then here we place this in an li tag, right? So I don't think we should do that here. We might do that on our own, but let's just try it out. Let's change this to ul. Let's see if that's going to work. If it doesn't work, we replace the code to a working version. So here, let's come here and then let's write the li tag. So let's save this and see. Let's refresh this. Let's say hello world. Okay, I don't think that is working the way we want it to work. So let's just take that away, right? Let's not spoil the code. All right. So let's leave it as div. Okay, so I think this is awesome for now. This is very cool. So something else we need to consider is we can as well remove this component here and create a separate module for it, right? So we can just come here. Then inside this component here, we can just remove course.jsx. Okay, so this is what we had in the previous video, right? So we can just remove this course.jsx. Let's delete it. And then in the component, let's create a new file called names.jsx. So here we simply come to the app.jsx. We cut this. Now this is going to break for now. Then inside names.jsx, we paste this here, right? So we are going to be exporting this. So we are going to be exporting that. We use export default. So we could just come here and then just write the export keyword, right? So coming back to the app.jxs, we need to import it. We say import names from component.names. So we can see that this works fine, right? So when we add a new string such as hello react, let's add this and see. So this works fine. So that works fine. All right. So with this, I think we've come to the end of today's exercise, which talks about, let's go back to the instruction and see what we have. So this is exercise 2.6, step 1, right? So we've been able to add a person to the phone book, right? So it's quite a challenging exercise, actually. It's challenging. Okay, all right. So with this, I'll say thanks for having me today and see you in the next video. Bye.